A very warm welcome to all of you. In last lecture, we talked about structural classification of muscles. Today, in this lecture, we will be discussing about the same topic further with complexity. When studying the muscles, it is important to remember the general pattern of the structure and function of voluntary muscle tissue, which has already been described. In addition, some further general information on the structure of muscles and the way in which they work will be discussed before the important muscles can be adequately described. Muscle is capable of contracting to a great extent, producing movements. There are three kinds of muscles: skeleton muscle, smooth muscle, and cardiac muscle. First, skeleton muscles. These muscles are attached to bones. Because muscles cross joints, they have the ability to move one bone in relation to another. Contraction of all skeleton muscles is under voluntary control. Through operations of some skeleton muscle is automatic, such as that of muscles of respiration, which continue to work during sleep. Still, one can hold breath. Skeleton muscle is also known as striated muscle because under microscope it appears so. Skeleton muscle basically consists of two portions: fleshy portion and tendinous portion. Fleshy portion contains muscle fibers. Fibers are actually elongated muscle cells. These may be of a millimeter to several centimeters. These contain several nuclei and myofibrils within sarcoplasm cell membrane. Sarcolemma encases the cell. Surrounding a bundle of several fibers is a fibrous sheet of endomysium. Surrounding several fibers is a fibrous sheet of perimysium covering the entire muscle. Each of the levels of membranes is interconnected. Vessels and nerves enter the outer layer to reach individual fibers. Groups of muscles in the limbs can be bound into compartments by intramuscular septa. These separate various groups of muscles. In the limbs, proximal portion of muscles is called the origin and distal of insertion. Tendons. Muscle fibers don't attach directly to bones, but rather through specialized extensions of fibrous tissue covering in the form of tendons. Tendons may be of different shapes. Linear tendons. These have broad fleshy attachment such as temporaris muscle. Cylindrical tendons. The fibers may be closely packed in a cylindrical pack. Common tendons. Sometimes tendon can serve a common attachment for two muscles. This may be of three types. Ref. It occurs when two flat muscles share a common attachment. The fleshy fibers are separated by a thin fibrous band or ref. Aponeurosis. It is a broad fibrous sheet or flattened tendon between two muscles, such as between occipitals and frontals. Intermediate tendon. It is common to fleshy type bellies. It is cylindrical shaped. Arrangement of muscle fibers. The muscles can also be classified according to muscle fibers. Parallel or converging fiber bundles are arranged in a parallel fashion along the muscle fibers. It gives a longer range of movement. Muscles can contract up to 33%. Some fibers have a linear origin and converge to a narrow insertion, triangular or a fan-shaped muscle. In some muscle fibers, at both ends of insertion and origin are fusiform. Pinnate muscles are for power instead of movement only. These are feather-like. Attaching to the tendon is obliquely arranged muscle bundle in the unipinnate, bipinnate and multipinnate form. Muscle fibers. Red pale muscles. These are types of striated muscles. Red muscles and pale muscles. Actions of skeleton muscles. Muscles can pull but are unable to push. Group of muscles have specific roles. Prime movers are muscles that are given order by brain to act in a particular fashion. Antagonists are muscles which can produce movements in the opposite direction of prime movers. Synergists are a group of muscles that are controlled by the extrapyramidal system of CNS. They control and refine any undesirable movement. Fixators don't play any part in actual movement but keep the body in fixed position to facilitate the action. Nerve supply of muscles. Motor nerve pierce the sarcolemma and terminate in end plates, while sensory nerves end in groups of specially modified muscle fibers, that is, muscle spindles. Smooth muscles. Smooth muscles don't cross joints to produce movements, but form the walls of hollow viscera and tubes. These lack the striation of skeleton muscles. Smooth muscle cells are long and tapered cells that overlap neighboring cells. Delicate connective tissue binds the cells. Cells are arranged in sheets around vessels, ureters, guts and hollow organs. Longitudinally arranged fibers cause shortening in tubal length, while circular fibers decrease human size. Cardiac muscles. These are composed of longitudinal striates showing faint transverse striations. Fibers are quadrangular. Each cardiac fiber has a centrally situated nucleus. The fibers lie side by side. These branches unite at frequent intervals. There is no definite cell between the individual fibers. Cementing material is bridged across by fibrils. Diameter is 20 micro mm. Special functional tissues. Bundles of His. It is composed of spindle-shaped cells. These have scanty striations. It has two branches passing to two ventricles. Its vascular supply is poor. Blood supply is mainly from branch of right coronary artery. Purkinje fibers. These form a network under the endocardium of ventricles and cells are quadrangular with blood outline. The cells join at both ends. It contains two nuclei in center. Protoplasm is granular and cross striations are seen only at ends. The fibers run from auricle to ventricle after piercing A to C septum. Sino-auricular and auriculo-ventricular nodes. These are composed of thin fibers. Fibers are fusiform. Cells are shorter and longitudinally striated. These are richly supplied with capillary meshwork. Psychological properties of cardiac muscles. Conductivity is a property of all heart muscles. Cardiac muscles can contract when stimulated and have power to receive stimulus. Cardiac muscles observe all or none phenomena. In this, heart behaves as a single muscle. Unit strength of contraction depends on duration of previous diastolic pause, initial length of fibers, nutrition and oxygen supply. Cardiac muscle has a long refractory period. During this period, muscle does not respond to external stimuli, but cardiac muscle is empowered to initiate its own impulse without external stimuli. It is carried out by SA node. Pacemaker. It is a modified muscle fiber and originates stimulus for cardiac contractions. Hence, it is known as pacemaker. During hot season, it can increase frequency of heart rate, while cold has slowing effect. Lowering of blood pressure, decreases force of cardiac contraction, lack of oxygen, quickness heart, and force is diminished. Excess of carbon dioxide accelerates the heart. Difference between voluntary and cardiac muscles. Muscle contraction. These are of two types: isotonic contraction and isometric contraction. First is isotonic contraction. The muscle becomes freely shortened and consequently thickened or swollen. The different muscles unite at any one point of time and all in different phases of activity. Individual variations are evened out and muscle gives a steady pull. In case of isolated muscle, about 40% of total chemical energy is converted into mechanical work. Coming on to isometric contraction, in this, shortening of muscles is minimal. Mechanical work done by muscles is negligible. The muscles of back contract isometrically and maintains its length. Nerve supply of skeleton muscles. People say that these are supplied by motor nerves, but these actually contain mixed fibers. 3/5 are motor efferent and 2/5 are sensory efferent. Efferent fibers. These originate as receptors on the muscles itself from spindles and tendon. These endings carry information back to the CNS. It gives us an awareness of our parts of body even without seeing them. Efferent fibers. Nerve fibers terminate as branches beneath the sarcolemma or cell membrane as motor end plates. Chemical changes in muscle contraction. During muscular contraction, adenyl phosphogen and glycogen break down, not separately. Adenyl pyrophosphate plus glycogen results in adenylic acid hexose monophosphate. Adenylic acid plus phosphogen results in adenyl phosphate plus creatinine. Then creatinine plus hexose phosphate results in reformed phosphogen plus lactic acid plus phosphate. The lactic acid is neutralized immediately after liberation by muscle protein. Lactic acid plus foodstuff in muscle plus oxygen results in glycogen plus carbon dioxide plus water. Reconstruction of muscle goes side by side with extensibility and elasticity. Muscles can easily be stretched. but it has the power to recover to its original size. When muscle contracts, it is more extensible. Thermal changes in muscles. There is initial heat production during muscle contraction and relaxation. It does not require oxygen, but delayed heat production, which is required after contraction phase, needs oxygen. Electrical change. When muscle is at rest, all muscle fibers are in same electrical condition, but when it contracts, charge becomes negative and electron becomes positive. The diaphasic current of action is produced. Galvanometer needle deflects in one direction and latron in another direction. Circulatory change. Venous return is increased, increasing cardiac output. Respiratory change. Pulmonary ventilation increases due to raised carbon dioxide in blood. More oxygen is taken in and more carbon dioxide is driven out. Muscle fatigue. Repeated muscle contractions use ATP faster than it is produced, and lactic acid accumulates faster than it can be removed. Muscles become tired. Efficiency of contraction weakens. If person takes rest, production of ATP increases and lactic acid is removed. During fatigue, lactic acid concentration may reach to 0.3%. Membranes. The most important of these are serous membranes. These are which line the large body cavities like pleura, pericardium and peritoneum. These are composed of single layer of squamous epithelium with a connective tissue. Surface remains moist and free movements with minimal friction is possible. Synovial membranes. These line in capsule of joints and sheaths of tendons. These are moist and allow free movements. Mucous membranes. It lines the nose, the mouth, the respiratory, the alimentary, bladder and uterus, etc. It is composed of simple and compound epithelioid cell. Clinical importance. Muscular dystrophy. It is a genetic disease. There develops gradual atrophy and weakening of muscle. Muscular dystrophy progresses, the muscle fibers atrophy and one is replaced by adipose tissue. Poliomyelitis. Paralysis of muscles develops due to viral disease affecting anterior horn of disease. Aging muscle. There is a disease in muscle mass. Atrophy of muscles result in arms and legs to appear thin and bony. Degeneration of CNS decreases motor activities. Hence, there develops a marked reduction in physical capabilities. Neoplasia. It is an uncontrolled cell growth without any need. Malignant cell. Nuclei of all cancer cells are often large. These are irregular in shape. Chromosomal abnormality and fragility of chromosomes are generally found. Mitosis occurs more frequently. These have ability to spread and transfer cancerous cells from one part or organ to another part, either by invasion or metastasis. Invasion occurs in many ways. It may proliferate and invade host tissue. Metastasis is the spread of malignant cell to distant specific sites through lymphatics or blood. Difference between benign and malignant neoplasm. Occipito Frontalis. It is a broad musculofibrous layer covering the front of skull. It consists of 4 parts, 2 occipital and 2 frontal. Each occipital part is thin and quadrilateral, arising from nuchal line of occipital bone. Frontal part is thin and adherent to superficial fascia. Muscle of facial expressions, face and neck. Orbicularis oculi. It is a broad, elliptical, flat muscle occupying eyelids. It surrounds the circumference of the orbit. It consists of 3 parts. Orbital part is reddish and thicker than palpebral fasciculi. It arises from nasal part of the frontal bone. Palpebral part is thin and pale. It arises from palpebral ligament. Lacrimal part lies behind the lacrimal sac. It is supplied by temporal and zygomatic branches of facial nerve. It is a sphincter muscle of the eyelids. Palpebral portion acts under voluntary control, closing lids during sleep. This muscle is involved in transporting tears. Buccinators. It is a thin quadrilateral muscle. It occupies the interval between maxilla and mandible. It is attached to the outer surface of alveolar processes and maxilla and mandible. The fibers of it angles of mouth. The buccinators is supplied by lower buccal branches of facial nerve. It compresses the cheek against teeth, helping in mastication. Orbicularis oris. It is made up of several strata surrounding the orifice of mouth, but in different direction. It contains some fibers of other muscles. It is supplied by lower buccal and mandibular marginal branches of facial nerve. It acts in closing of lips. It brings the lips together and protrudes them. Masseter. It is quadrilateral and consists of 3 superimposed layers. Superficial layer is largest. Middle layer arises from deep surface of zygomatic arc. Middle and deep layer together constitute the deep part of ramus. The masseter is supplied by a branch of anterior trunk of mandibular nerve. The masseter elevates the mandible to occlude the teeth in mastication. Sternocleidomastoid. It passes obliquely down across the side of neck and forms a prominent landmark. It is thick and narrow centrally but broader at ends. The muscle divides the side of cheeks into 2 triangles, anterior and posterior. It is supplied by accessory nerve. Its action is to tilt the head towards the shoulder. When head is fixed, they assist in raising the thorax during inspiration. Intercostal muscles. These are thin superimposed layers. Intercostal externi are 11 in number. Each muscle passes from lower border of one rib to the upper border of rib below. These are thicker than the intercostal interni and the fibers are directed obliquely downwards and laterally. Intercostal muscles. Intercostal interni are also 11 in number. Their attachments commence interly at sternum. Each muscle descends from the floor of costal groove and the corresponding costal cartilage and is inserted into the upper border of rib below. Both external intercostals are elevators and internal intercostals are depressors of ribs. With this, we bring our today's lecture to an end. I hope this must have lifted up your concerns about this important concept. Thank you, have a nice time and goodbye.